Welcome to Feminine Power Time. Turn off the chatter and tune in to what matters. This is Christine Arylo, your host, and this is a place where we reimagine the way we in the world work from the inside out. It's a place where well-being and leadership and humanity and wisdom meet. And so good to be here with you today as we embark on a 3-part series that I have dubbed Genuine Power. We're going to be diving into power. What is it really? What the heck is going on in the world that is so, oh my gosh, talk about power. Lots of distorted power flying around out there. And more importantly, how do we elevate the conversation out of what we see in the mainstream world so that we can elevate our mindset, our perspective, regulate our nervous systems, regulate our emotional systems so that we can actually see clearly of what is really happening and that we can make decisions of how to be in the world, how to focus our energy in the world, how to discern what is real from what is false. And without language to be able to see things, it's really hard to see things. In fact, without a language for most things, we're kind of blind to these things. And one of the things that we practice here at Feminine Power Time is using what I like to call our wisdom eyes. Opening up to use our intuition, our intelligence, our insight, our instincts to see what's real. And I don't know about you, but I am... It's intense out there. You know, I've been saying it's intense out there for 10 years. We're going into our 10th. Actually, are we in our 10th season? Oh, we're in season 8.5, you all. So we're approaching. I guess we're going to move into 8 3/4, or maybe we're even in season 9. I'm going to have to think about that. I'm actually at a little bit of an in-between place myself, and I'm curious if any of you out there are also feeling like you're in a little in-between place, or maybe whether you're having personal swirl, relational swirl, you're just watching the swirl around us. It feels really good to be like, I'm just going to root in place so I can stay centered. I can stay clear, I can stay calm, I can stay rooted, radiant, resilient, and in right relationship as we go through this very intense transformational time on our planet. And so what we're going to do today is the episode name is Call to Honor, Humanity, and Sanity. And it will be the first in our 3-part series on genuine power. And I love the word genuine. I use it in different than authentic, which is a fine word. It's just overused. And authentic, interestingly enough, that word, it means basically to be in alignment with one's own story. Whereas the word genuine, the root of the word genuine means native, natural, and innate. So you can be authentic and totally be authentic in alignment with the story that you've made up about yourself and who you are and how you want the world to see you, which is what many people in places of power, and power could be a position that you've been given. It could be a way that you show up in relationship. It could be we all of us misuse power. Not a person on the planet, maybe the Dalai Lama is an exception, but I know I have misused my power, and not power of position. I don't think I've ever misused my power of position, but I've certainly misused my energetic power and ability to be domineering and dominating, especially if I've ever felt defensive or on the defensive. And part of why we practice personal leadership here is that there's so many things that we can look at outside of us and see what's wrong with any person in a position of power, whether they're running a company, a team, a country, whatever, and it's easy to point the finger out there. And sometimes we don't need to point our finger, but we need to give voice to it. But if we can't look inside of ourselves and see how the same misuse of power or the way in which we've called power inside of ourselves authentic, I'm authentically using my voice, I'm authentically being who I am, but at the same time, you're also having an impact in the world or with someone else that's not honorable, that isn't really coming from humanity, not really what human means, and isn't sanity. And for any of us that have ever littered, you all, that is actually a misuse of power, because as it turns out, humanity and human means to be an earth man. We'll get into that in a little bit. But like, so if you're a steward of the earth and you're, just not aware of the plastic that you're using, or there's so many different things that we do that are like small things, but they can be big things, especially if you're conscious, right? It's one thing to do things when you're not conscious. I'm sure that, as I was a teenager, I was misused my domineering power a lot more, but I wasn't conscious. Now I'm conscious of it. So if I get a little ornery with Noah or a little ornery with Sahaji and I misuse that power, usually the universe gives me a quick adjust. But I wanted to have this conversation with you all in some seriousness here, because there are really serious things going on in the world. And I haven't responded. It's been a month since the last podcast, because I just want to give you a couple reasons why. One is that I made a promise many years ago in one of my wisdom trainings that is a promise that's very deeply steeped in the feminine. And the promise is this: allow the words I speak to be worthy of the silence I break. Allow the words I speak to be worthy of the silence I break. And so that is a promise that I have made. And one way of honor is to honor your promises to yourself and these deeper ones that we take in relationship. And that is a promise I feel like I've made in my vocation as a person who does have a voice and things that people listen to. I mean, I never want you to listen to me as in like, well, Christine said this. I want you to listen and hear what I'm sharing, and then you to be discerning. But I'm very aware that I don't need to just add to the noise out there. So one of the reasons you haven't heard from me for a month is that I've just been waiting. It's like I'm not going to speak until I have something that comes through me that's worth saying. And there's not enough noise and chaos. And it's another one of my promises, is to never add to the chaos, to the best of my ability, to the noise that's out there. And that is the way of the feminine. We've done podcasts before, like, what does the feminine look like? And there's one of the ones on the power spectrums of stillness and swiftness. And so stillness is a power. It actually it's easier, actually, quite frankly, to muster up the energy to be swift than it is to muster up the patience to be still. And I had several moments where I'm like, I should say something. I need to say something. And I would slow down and I would tune in, and I'm like, no, that is not mine to say. No, that's not mine to say there. So I've been really listening. And this is another part of feminine power time. In a way, the feminine is not about mental chatter. So I'm sharing some of this because it's important context for why we're here and why I am actively thinking and feeling into what feminine power time will become in its 9th year or its 10th year and forward. Is that here feminine power time, because it's feminine power, we're getting rid of the masculine power, we're bringing them together. But in order to bring the masculine distortions over, we need to strengthen the feminine. And then the masculine, like a magnet, comes over and it balances that feminine, and then it balances the masculine, and it allows that feminine to stop feeling so disempowered, and then the two join together. And so the feminine is speaking from the heart. The feminine is speaking from the body, and then the mind becomes stiller. It gets connected to the higher mind instead of the human mind. It gets connected to the heart, to compassion. It gets connected to our body and a feeling of safety and ease. So when we're not at ease in our bodies, when we're not at ease in our hearts, our minds go bananas. And if you look around at the current media world and you look at a lot of the things that go on in the mental banter, it's just a lot of triggering of unease, and a lot of mental chatter that just adds to the chaos. So I'm going to invite you, in order for us to get into these deeper levels of wisdom, we have to slow down. So take a breath, if you would, with me. and you can take as many actually as you want. It's the practice I call take a breath and take a beat. And whenever I'm doing leadership work, this is one of the first things I teach an individual. We're doing a cohort right now for a company of 13 women leaders, and this is the first thing I'm teaching them, and I'm still teaching it because they forget. Because it takes a long time, to remember that this is actually like a real thing of take a breath, take a beat, to regulate our nervous systems, to slow down and let our bodies feel a sense of ease. Which is one of the other reasons I haven't also tuned in, is that I've talked with you all, is because I've had my own non-regulation going on between needing to leave Asheville for a couple weeks because the hurricane took a left and moved right through our town. I'm fine. Noah's fine. Our house is fine. We're very fortunate. Other parts of the city are not fine. Not all of the city has been decimated, but some pretty specific parts, and I'm not going to talk about all that today because I do have thoughts, and this is part of pulling back, is like not just thoughts in my head, but deep knowings, deep insights. We'll get to this in our third part of genuine power, where we have to slow down and pull back out of the noise to see with our wisdom eyes. Well, we're going to get there. We'll get there 2 more sessions from now. But I just want to let you know I'm all okay. And also, I wasn't regulated and I wasn't ready. So I don't speak and teach and share and guide others if I'm not regulated myself. So thank you for the grace and thanks for coming back. And if you're new here, welcome you all. Let's just land in together. Let me take a sip of my water in this beautiful cup, a glass blown cup that a local Asheville artist made. One day, Noah and I were just driving down the street on a Sunday. So why I love living in a place where artists are actually valued and can live here and work here. This is a very important part to me with Asheville, is that it doesn't lose that part, because I've seen so many places I've lived where the artists can't afford to live where they sell their art. And I never want to live in a place like that. And there's not a lot of places left where that's not happening. Greedy power instead of genuine power. But this is an example. Noah and I were driving down the street in our neighborhood next to ours, and it's like, I would really like to, I need some cups and glasses. And sure enough, there were these 3 women who are professional glass blowers and teachers, and they had some stuff that wasn't 100% okay, looked okay to me. And I got these beautiful glasses that are normally like $60 for like $8 each. I love them so much. Makes me happy every time I drink my my water out of it. And water is the feminine. All right, dear one. So as we go into this today, I also just want to invite you in for a moment to presence wherever you might be having some wobbles or some fear or some anxiety or some uncertainty or some tension or some feels. We're living in an amplified time. I don't know when this portal is going to end. It's not going to end because, somebody else, this person was elected or this CEO took over our company. We'll talk about that more next time, is that there is no one leader who will ever, in a position of power, make a difference. But there are leaders put in positions of power that can make the journey through this time that we are in collectively more full of grace, more full of compassion, more full of sanity, healthiness. The word sanity, you all, means healthy. And it comes from the word sanitas, which means health or healthy, to behave in a normal, rational manner, the ability to think rationally and normal. And in Hindi, it's the sound power of mind. And I like to think of that as like a higher mind, healthy mind, healthy mind. So when we put people into positions of power that are not in their genuine power, their innate natural power, they maybe be in their authentic power, and think of it like we're born, no one is born on this planet greedy, narcissistic, dysfunctional, psychopathic, mean. And these are all things that happen because they drop onto the planet. And it could happen in utero. It could happen the day you're born. It happens all along the way that we get imprinted. and we get imprinted with outside influences, and we also receive what I call love cracks. In every spiritual tradition, they talk about these. I call them love cracks. But it's basically the human condition of like coming onto the planet and not feeling safe, not feeling held, not feeling heard, not feeling seen. And then we all develop personalities around this. We all develop egos around this. Egos and personalities aren't bad. It's when they're running the show that we get distorted power and we see dishonor. We see things that are happening that are like so beyond what humanity is, what it means to be humane. Think of the word humanity, right? It means humane. Human comes from the Latin humanus, which means homo means man and humus means earth. So really humanity, humans are men of man, human, man of earth, and it comes from humane. So we see these things that are happening with people in positions of power, whether it's in politics, whether it's in, I'm watching these insurance companies and things that are happening and people not wanting to pay out for different things and things that are both on both sides happening. Companies, corporations, like there's so many family systems, it's like there's many layers to this. Don't worry, I'm not going to leave you in the dumper on all this. I promise that we will have hope biscuits along the way, and we will end and bring in light biscuits too, because if we only look at the hard stuff, none of us are going to make it through. But the reason I'm presencing all of this is that what I want us to grok in today, right now, and we've talked about this for so long, but because I think we just were preparing for the apex, and I don't know how long this apex is going to be as we go through this transformation. How do we go through this in sacred transformation? Remember, the word sacred means devoted to wholeness, without violence to self or others, with respect. Love that word so much. And if we are truly going through a transformation as a planet, as in consciousness, in how we operate as humans, all the things, I 100% believe we do and have a choice of how we go through it. First, individually, then in our relationships, then in our personal one-on-one relationships, that be our partners, our kids, our friends. When we think of it inside of companies, whenever I'm working with anyone who works, whether they're a manager of people or they're a leader of multiple teams, I'm like, their team is your ecosystem. You have power and influence over that, regardless of what the CEO, not regardless, but regardless of what the CEO is doing. You can create a healthy ecosystem. Not totally regardless, but there's a lot of pieces in that. So we want to look at the parts that we have influence over. I mean, this is why I wrote Overwhelmed, did over it, and spent those almost 5 years writing that book, is because it gives us the insight of this is where we have the power to stay centered and calm within ourselves, to take back our life force, to take back our time, to look at where we can take pressure off and create realities that are sustainable and supportive, so we can be clear beings to be able to see where do we actually have the power to create influence. And whether that's voting, whether that's how we show up and are with our kids, like there's so many different ways, like how we choose to do this. So today's conversation is really about that. And I'm going to invite you to write down these words: honor, humanity, and sanity. And as we go through these today, to look at places in your life where you're really embodying honor and humanity and sanity, and places where it's challenging for you, and not to make yourself wrong or bad, but just like, I could lean into that some more. I could bring more of that energy into my life, or I could bring more energy into my internal life, or into my team, or into my family system, or into my relationships. And then putting those wisdom eyes on and look around through this lens of honor, humanity, and sanity, both the absence of it and the presence of it, and start to notice it in people, both in your personal life, but also what you're seeing on the public screen. Because part of what's happening, we'll talk more about this next time when we get into what I call the powerarchy and duality reality, is that part of the reason people are not responding from a place of sanity There are these deep imprints where people they just can't see things. Think of a time in your life when you were maybe in an abusive relationship or a not great job, or there was just something in your life like that you couldn't see it. Even if people told you, you didn't see it. You made excuses for it because you weren't able or willing at that time to allow yourself to see it. Because if you allowed yourself to see it, you were going to have to actually make some challenging decisions and make some changes, or you were going to have to go deeper into yourself and deal with stuff that you don't want to deal with, those love cracks. And what we do as humans is we would almost just do anything but have to deal with the love cracks. We'd rather just be on the external. So think of a time in your life, probably younger you, when that was true about you. And I know that was me. I know. I mean, many of you've heard my story or read "Choosing Me" before my first book, where I really tried very hard to stay on the escalator to death, which is what I call this is how you get to success. And I was in a relationship that was emotionally toxic, borderline abusive, and I was just like not willing to see it because of I had to go do deeper work inside of myself that was connected to grief of losing a father and a best friend and being born on this crazy planet and all of the things. I almost did an awaken to myself. And it was almost bad enough that I almost married we'll call him low on the narcissistic scale, but I almost missed my life. And that was hard work to go through that. So kind of at a mass scale, some of the things that we're seeing out there are causing people to have to wake up, and it's easier to not. And I don't mean woke, whatever, hootie, Judy, hoke, woke. I'm not talking about labels. I'm talking about a deep knowing of self and a return to self as with a capital S, to the place of essence and presence and basic trust. More than we're going to talk about today. But you can see like there's a lot of depth here. So for each of us, if we can start to look and see where the dishonor is, see where the lack of humanity is, see where the insanity is, and not run it through our system. Now, this is a big piece and why I couldn't talk to you all for the last 4 weeks, because I was doing a pretty good job of not running it through my system, but I got tweaked out 2 or 3 times, and rightfully so. Like, there's not really fresh water here in Asheville. People aren't working that are in restaurants. There's a crazy political nutso campaign going on in the United States. People are, lying. And it was just like, oh my God, like humanity is like, it's gone insane. And I just couldn't handle it, tweaked out. And so, but when I'm not in that place, and when we're not in that place, when we can stay centered, this is why are you doing every day your centering practice? Connecting with yourself, body, mind, heart, and spirit, doing the things like breath work and yoga and walking and disconnecting from the media and being really clear how much you take in. Or are you using those things to deal with the unease? Getting into nature, like every day you all must connect with yourself before you connect with the outside world. It is mandatory. And if you don't have a centering practice, go to my website, ChristinaArylo.com, get the bookend practice there. There's all kinds of resources there, the Feminine Wisdom Cafe. But it's as simple as making sure you're connecting to yourself, body, mind, heart, and spirit, so that you're regulated. And I got a little off my practice still, and I just came back to my practice. And tonight I will go to yoga, and Sunday night I will go to yoga. So what are the things that you can put into place during this time that are going to help support you so that you can stay centered? And they're probably maybe things you've already done. They don't have to go make something new. I don't care if it's like cooking kitchery or cooking pasta on a Thursday night, or just like things that get you connected to the earth, taking baths that get you into the water, laying on the ground, reading a book. I love fantasy, like young adult fantasy books. I'm going to post some of those up on the Feminine Wisdom Cafe. Things that regulate your nervous system. You want to be doing that for sure for the next couple of months, all the time. But then being able to look at it and being like, do I want to plug into that? Like, I'm just watching it. So it's about being an observer of it. And I'll share with you one of the reasons why it's hard to just observe it, how we get sucked in. It's our own fear. So just think about that for a moment and the ways that you might be getting sucked in, the ways that you might be what's called lowering your frequency. We talk about that a lot here, and going into blame or shame or anger or fear or anxiety. And it's okay to dip into that. And we always say, know how far you dip so that you don't get stuck in it. Touch it because it's important. A couple of days ago, I woke up while I was still slightly unregulated, not feeling rooted. And I just said to Noah, I'm like, oh my God, I'm afraid. And I'm like, I'm not usually afraid. Like, I don't, it's not like a thing. Like, I don't, I mean, but I'm like, and he's like, well, what are you afraid of? And I shared some of the pieces of just like, I'm just afraid that humanity is going to continue to fall for the authentic power, the greedy power, the things that they can't see because they can't see. And then we're just going to have to go through this transformation in like deep pain versus going through it. Like when I got to go through my transformational processes, I was held by teachers. I was held by wonderful people. I was held over time to be able to move through things. And there were moments of pain and there was struggle, but like I was held. And my prayer for us all is that we are held through this and that people can feel held in it. And so for so many thousands of years, I'm like, oh my God, can we not keep repeating this pattern? And so sharing that with Noah was helpful. If you find yourself in a place where you're dipping too down, we kind of call it like we're dipping into the frequency way down, or we call it in one of my leadership councils, we call it wise woman's going down. She's going down, kind of like a helicopter, right? Or like an airplane. If you feel yourself like you're going down, you want to throw out a love line. You want to throw out a wisdom line. This is why we always talk about it, and I've done podcasts on this, on creating your wisdom council. Having at least one person, but way better to have more than one person that you can reach out to. And so and eventually, as you build those connections, what happens, because you're working on the intuitive, what we call the wise woman coconut web, or the wise one coconut web, all of a sudden a friend will reach out and be like, I was thinking of you, Christine. How are you doing in Nashville? Like, this just happened yesterday. And it's a woman in one of my leadership councils and who's also a very dear friend of mine. And I said, I've actually been like deregulated and I've been going down, and I had a 48-hour spin attack. And I'm like, but I would love to have a wise woman tea. And so, that night she's like, I'm free until 8:00. And so she just asked me, what were you afraid of? And I just was like, blah, 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 blah. And then it was out. And then she shared a story with me about Taylor Swift and her daughter going to Miami this last weekend. And I've never seen a Taylor Swift concert, so I don't know a lot about it, but she was telling me about this stadium of 60,000 women that were there, mostly women and a lot of daughters, and how people were walking around and introducing themselves and these friendship bracelets that they exchanged with each other. And just like this general people dressed up in different costumes and this and that, and her daughter crying because she was overwhelmed by emotion. And whether you're a Taylor Swift fan or not, whatever, but just like I could feel the energy. So you could feel the energy because she had her wise woman eyes on. And I was saying like that is, there's a teaching of wisdom that I don't think I've ever spoken on Empower Time, but I think I'm going to speak it. Yeah. Okay. I got permission, which was kind of a divine download a couple years ago when there was another dark place during the pandemic, and during watching things like the Capitol of the United States being attacked, and then people lying about things, and just like watching all of these things happening. And I remember tuning in and to my connection to source and asking what just give me something. I need something here, some wisdom. And one of the pieces of wisdom is like, how do we shift out of this? How do we elevate out of this? How do we move through this time? And it came through as kind of a poem, and it's this. When the women turned toward each other, and the generations unite. The cauldron of co-creation will ignite. When the women turn toward each other and the generations unite, the cauldron of co-creation will ignite. When the women turn toward each other and the generations unite, cauldron of co-creation will ignite. Now, that doesn't mean that men or people who don't identify as a woman are part of all of this, but this is where the feminine comes in, and why I love how so many of the women leaders I work with, how they report into men who support them to get coaching through me, through their company. How many men support their daughters and support their wives. How many men are allies in so many ways. Noah and his mankind buddies, our friends, are just delivering stuff all over the city right now. And I'm so glad I don't have to do that. And Noah went to my pottery studio and helped pull out mud from one of my 2 studios that was decimated. One is okay, one was decimated. Why I share that with you is because it is happening right now. And that's what we call it an EOE, an evidence of elevation, happening at a Taylor Swift concert. Women turning toward each other, regardless of political party, regardless of what they believe about should a person have an abortion or not an abortion. I'm very still unclear why any woman would believe another woman doesn't have right to her own body. That we'll talk about maybe next time, because that's the powerarchy talking. Freedom is sovereignty in your own body, and when you live from honor, the word honor means respect, and it means freedom from arrogance. And arrogance is one form of arrogance is thinking you know the right way. That is a form of arrogance. And when you and any of us put our right way onto someone else, we are now not in honor. We are in dishonor. And so that EOE of the Taylor Swift, when Jennifer shared that with me, I was like, oh my God, Jennifer, that's the thing. That's the thing when the women turn toward each other. I'm like, who would have thought? It's happening at Taylor Swift. And she gets to 60 to 90,000 people in one swath. And it's also how I felt when I watched the Kamala Harris and Liz Cheney talk together in Wisconsin. Again, it's not about politics, because politics, again, we'll talk about this next time, about Democrat, Republican, or wherever you live in the world. It's duality reality. It's tribalism. It is like us against them. And that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about coming together around humanity, humanity's health on this earth. And humans are part of earth. So this is humanity, that we care. We are stewards of the earth, and we are stewards of what it takes to in the indigenous cultures, as far as I understand it from my teachers in the earth wisdom tradition. For example, in America, they took a lot of things from how the tribes governed. One of the things that they didn't take, which is foundational to earth wisdom, is that we are stewards of the land, not owners of the land. And 2, we always care for the children and women. Do no harm to the children and the women. Now, that doesn't mean go out and massacre men, but it means that in a healthy society, healthy sanity, way of thinking, healthy way of thinking, right? Sanity, the ability to think, behave in a normal, reasonable manner, sound power of mind. Sanity is that we do no harm to the earth, because we're stewards of it, and we do no harm to the women and to the children. And then if you're truly living by honor means regard with respect. It means honesty. It means integrity. And if you think about some of the ways when there was more honor, I actually really feel like we're going to kind of talk about honor here for a moment, y'all. So, okay, I'm just going to take a pause. I'm going to go into honor here. I'm going to touch back into humanity and sanity, and then wrap this bulk all up for us. But I want you just to take a moment here, because we're a little past halfway. And just notice what's an evidence of elevation for yourself that you've seen. Let me finish my thought about Liz and Kamala. What we're seeing there is when the women turn toward each other and the generations unite, crossing across a tribal this or that duality reality to say, actually, we're going to come together around freedom and democracy and put policy and all these things apart. And I just think watching them do that together was an evidence of elevation, that there is a way that we can come together and in an honorable, respectful way to disagree, but to also agree to the common things that allow us to not have to force our ideas on others, but to honor many different viewpoints, but still be able to live together on one planet, in one family, in one team. And it's hard. It's not easy. There's a great movie if you need a movie to watch too. It's called The American President, and it was Michael Douglas and Annette Bening are in it, and it was like the 1990s, early 2000s, and it actually gives a lot of insight into what's going on in America right now. But there's this moment when he talks about democracy and how like it's not easy. It's not easy to live in a place where the person that is standing next to you is doing something that you don't agree with or doesn't agree with you. And he talks about how you have to like fight for it and show up and be in it. I mean, any relationship is like this, right? It's hard, especially when we feel threatened. And so it's okay to for us to acknowledge that, honor is a challenging thing, but I think a lot about if we can look at these things, these honor, humanity, and sanity. Okay, so here's the piece, EOEs. Where are places you're already seeing that? Because I want us all to get some hope, call them hope biscuits in my leadership councils. We're like, oh, we're all like, why is women going down? Why is women feeling a little down? And we're like, what? I'm like, we need hope biscuits. Like in England, how they have tea every day at 3:00. We need hope biscuits that we can just chomp on every day at 3:00 to be like, okay, there's a hope biscuit. So you can borrow this practice if you like. But we're doing it right now. Is what is an example of honor, humanity, or sanity? So remember, honor is where you're watching respect happen, honesty happen, integrity happen. It's freedom from false pride and arrogance. It's the freedom from not putting yourself to be better than others, but also having a healthy self-respect. Or you've seen humanity. You've seen really people show up as stewards of the earth. You've seen people care for women and children. You've seen them show up as oh, I'm a man, human on earth. I'm part of earth. You've really seen that. Watching Noah's, we had a guy coming to stay tonight who came all the way from Virginia and is here in Asheville for one whole week just volunteering. And the Mankind Project is getting supplies to underserved populations in Asheville. And so Noah's been driving around and picking up this and that. And that to me is humanity. They're just doing it. No one's paying them. No one asked them. There wasn't any law that came down. They're just doing it. That to me is humanity. And it's also honor, to see that in men. One of the things that and I'm going to go into honor here. I'll get your hope biscuit. I just want to make sure. Also sanity. If there's any sound thinking is happening. Sound thinking is happening. Sound thinking is happening. Yay, yay, yay. Okay. So those are the three. You should write them down. Those are ingredients for your hope biscuits, or what I like to call evidence of elevation. Okay. Take a breath. Told you I was going to leave you all down in the dumper. Did I tell you how happy I am to be with you? I really have missed you all in this way. Thank you for having the grace of knowing I would be back and that I needed this month, and then also summer of light, the season of light, where we used and edited and pulled out of our library and grafted from them. And that you keep coming back. And this is the process of co-creation. It takes some time. There are some new things that are coming forward around what Feminine Power Time wants to evolve into and what it's going to look like. And I can't tell you what they are yet because it involves other people. And we're in co-creative process, but you can count on me to still, I'm recommitting to being here through March of 2020, March equinox of 2025, and there will be other things emerging. So you can count on me for that. And I'm really grateful to be here with you all. And thank you for the grace of needing some space to be able to come back and be fresh. These are things I've wanted to talk with you all for a long time. And so my palate cleanser is helping me come back in this way. So let's talk about this call to honor, call to humanity, call to sanity. Okay, these are Christina Arylo's thoughts. I shared them with you and invite you to form your own and then decide how you want to bring them into action. So honor. I believe that one of the things that we're suffering from when we look around at what's going on in this world is a lack of honor. And power, how this is related to power. I'm going to share a power spectrum with you in a second of what honor really is. But if you look at, when I think of Noah's Mankind Group and what they're doing, they embody honor. There's an honor of like people in need. We have resources. We're going to help. It's the honorable thing to do. And they're not doing it to get anything from anyone. They just have that honesty and that integrity and that deep regard for respect. The Mankind Project, for those of you who aren't aware, is pretty much filled with men who live in honor, or they do their best. Like they're doing their internal work. They really want to show up as good, balanced men. They're very present men. Gives me hope for humanity in many ways. And I look at a lot of men that are in places of power that are not honorable, and women too. Like this is not just a man thing. The way that if you look at you just look at what's happening around politics of like people name calling, and not like name calling. Like name calling is not honorable. There's no respect in name calling, not at all. Or you look at like people and the lying that people are doing. That's not honesty. That's a lack of honor. Integrity is also, without integrity, there's a lack of honor. And I think of, some of the men, some of the people, some of the leaders that like in the 40s and the 50s that were in places of power, had a lot of lack of integrity in certain areas of their life, especially many of them were not very faithful to their spouses. But there was an honor of respect around engagement with people. And, they talk about like, there was like honor on the battlefield. And not that we want to have wars, but what we're watching right now is there's no honor. There's no honor in that at all. I mean, I imagine a world where there isn't any war because we can actually sit down and have conversations from different points of view and be connected to and be deeply committed to respect and like doing the work it takes to come out the other side. But what we're seeing in the wars are not honorable. And yet there's honorable people all over the place. But we have to ask ourselves, right, this question of why would we vote for? Why would we work for? Why would we lie for? Why would we support any person in a position of power, whether that's like our grandfather or our grandmother, or it's our neighbor, or it's person in political office, or it's a person running a company? Like, why would we do that? There's lots of reasons, and this is not about blaming anyone or even needing to take action on it. I just want us to ask the question, because that's where the wisdom is. That's where the change is. When I wrote Choosing Me Before We, which is all about self-love and relationship, and it answers the question, why do smart women marry and go into relationships that are toxic and unhealthy for them? And what do they need to know so they don't do it? There's wisdom in there for sure, and there's stories in there, but there's a lot of questions. There's a lot of inquiries in that book. There's a lot of inquiries in all of my books, because I believe that I can provide some wisdom that is timeless and true. It's only until you ask the right inquiry and you make the inquiry and then you contemplate it and sit with it and you ask ourselves, what would make a smart person with sanity? That seems sound in mind, is a good person, has humanity. Put and allow people in positions of power and authority, again, whether that's family or your town or all the different places. How does that happen? What is that? And not from a place of blame and not from a place of shame, but from a deep inquiry. And we'll talk more about this next time because you'll get some good wisdom if you ask that. And then what causes someone to come from that place? So let me share with this power spectrum for you. This will give you a little insight. So power spectrum looks like an infinity sign on its side. There's a left side, a right side. Left side is the feminine, right side is the masculine, or you can put anything, the yin, yang in there, anima, animus. Water is the feminine, fire is the masculine. When you put two things into that power spectrum and they harmonize, you elevate into a higher level of leadership, a higher level of wisdom, a higher level of intelligence, a higher level of being able to operate in the world. When you're off those power spectrums, you're in what I call power distortion. So this power spectrum, on the left, you have humility. That's the feminine, that's water. On the right, you have dignity. That's the masculine, the yang, the fire. When you have humility and dignity together, what that rises into is honor. Honor for self, honor for others. And for those of you that are familiar with the self-love work that I've done, self-honor is part of the same branch as self-respect. So there's 10 different branches of self-love. Self-honor and self-respect are so close. They're on the same branch. And so it's kind of interesting because when you have self-love that's deeply rooted in self-worth and self-acceptance, because that's the root ball and the roots of the self-love tree, you don't need false pride and you don't need arrogance because you know who you are, you accept who you are, you value yourself from a deep internal place that's rooted in wholeness. So when we look at the outside world in lots of different places, and dignity actually means valuing the being and worth of yourself. It's healthy self-respect. When that's distorted, what you get is hubris. What you get is this almost feeling like I'm like a god and I'm invincible and I'm outside of laws. I'm outside of anything. I can fly into outer space. I could buy anything because I have money. So I have power. I have influence. Like you're hearing my voice change. I'm kind of embodying the energy. Like it is arrogance. It is greed. It's this there can be narcissistic, just a deep, it's just like it's all about you. And that is distorted power. And when you're living over there in that world, there's no humility. And there's usually not a lot of humanity either, because humanity requires the heart. And when we're in distorted masculine, well, there's no heart. It is all just power, body, instinctual, move it through. Body with the mind, heart absence. You need the feminine to have the heart. Now, the heart can also be distorted. So humility, when distorted, is that kind of self-deferentialness of or self-deprecating part. Like, oh, not me. Oh, I didn't really do anything. Oh, it's not me. It's not me. It's not me. It's really the we. It's really the we. And that doesn't honor yourself. A lot of times when I'm working with leaders who come from a specific culture, a lot of times the Asian cultures, there's a strong over-indexing on that humility part because of this ingrained cultural part. And I think in America, we have the opposite problem. There's an over indexing on that dignity part. If you're strong and macho and powerful and peacocky and, you don't take any shit or whatever, that's powerful. That is not genuine power. That is projected power. That it could be authentic to your story, but it's not innate to who we are. So just starting to play with this yourself, of humility and dignity, and where do you naturally fall in that? And where could you use some more humility or more, dignity? Again, remember that humility is freedom from false pride or arrogance, not equating your worth to being better than. So when we compare ourselves, when we think that we know better than other people, that's arrogance and false pride. And that's where the distorted feminine can get manipulative or catty or a lot of other things. So just play. It's one of my favorite power spectrums, you all. Like, I love this power spectrum so much. And then, bring it into your own life. And this is part of how we reimagine the world from the inside out, is that we are actually coming into balance with honor ourselves. And just even noticing that in situations and then seeing it. There's this great thing. I looked it up in the dictionary about dignity. I love that word, dignity. Don't you love that word, dignity? And one of the sentences was, it was beneath his dignity to cheat. And I just love that so much, because that goes to the integrity part and the honesty part and the respect part, and why I love the Mankind Project so much. And I'm not doing an advertisement for the Mankind Project, but I have to tell you, when I first started engaging with them about 15 years ago, I'm like, who are these men and why are they so present? And why do they keep looking at me, not staring at me, but talking to me and being genuinely interested in me? And I was just I had this my own distorted view about men don't care about relationships, and men don't this and that. And then as I started, knowing more men of the Mankind Project, and I started working with some really lovely companies, I got meeting really good, balanced men, and I'm like, oh my God, these men are amazing. They're wonderful, and so they're out there. One way to get some biscuits, some hope biscuits, and raise the frequency is honor the men in your life. Honor the men that have honor and integrity and honesty, and say thank you, and give acknowledgement for it, and give appreciation for it. I think that honor is this, it's if it was a plant in our garden. The more we can love on it and appreciate it and acknowledge it, the more it'll grow. And that's how we beat fear, you all. That's how we beat whatever this thing is, that's fear that gets into good people. I mean, people are born, right? Genuine, nature, natural, innate, human. People are born programmed for humanity. And then things happen that distort that and shift them in all kinds of ways. And then that's how that fear gets in there. That's how that darkness gets in there. And then they lose themselves. Like I was saying the other day when I was talking to Noah, I'm like, do you think greed is a disease? So I was just sitting in this inquiry of what causes a person to go beneath their dignity? What causes a person to look the other way when inhumane things are happening, or lie about inhumane things happening? What causes that? What causes people to shift the truth to fit their agenda? And one of the things that came up, and it came up right after the storms hit Asheville, was greed. And we'll talk more about that next time too. It's one of the 3 greatest fires, they say. It's destroying the earth and humanity. And I just looked at him, I'm like, do you think it's a disease? And I'm still contemplating it, but a disease that creates an unnatural reality that distorts people. So just opening your eyes, see if you can see the greed, maybe not as the person who's being greedy, although they might be, but see if you can start to see the greed as an energy, and ask yourself, where does that come from? And then see if there's any of that in you. Maybe not. Maybe you're on the other side of giving it all away. Self-sacrifice is the greed would be the distortion of the masculine power. Self-sacrifice, a martyrdom, would be the feminine. So we can look at these things and come back to the humanity part. And so on the humanity part, which is about being humane, I just want to pause this as we wind down here to one of our practices that we do at the Feminine Wisdom Way is there's the 13, we practice cyclical living in the moon cycles, and each moon cycle is connected to a feminine power and energy and archetypal energy. And the last 13th superpower that goes with the 13th moon cycle is grace. And so we end every year and we start every year with grace. And I feel as we look at this part of humanity, we all come in humane. We all come in with the capacity of compassion and heart. Something happens, things happen, and we move away from that. And we can talk later about how it happens and what people keep talking about that. There is wisdom around all of that. But for the moment, we work with the power of grace. So I want to invoke grace here for all of us. And as we do this as kind of an ending blessing for each one of us, and also for the bigger world and the parts of the world that perhaps we have more energy and focus on. There's two main teachings about grace. One is that grace makes the crooked places straight. And two, make no move before grace goes before you. She's been moving. I've been waiting for her to give me, I call her, give me the green light to go. And the color of grace is rose gold. And so you just take a moment to close your eyes. We're just going to create a small blessing field, small but mighty blessing field here. And presence right now, anyone in your life that might be struggling, whether that in really coming into your own energy of humanity and humanness and humaneness, and really dropping into your heart in an embodied way. Because we know when the body and the heart feel ease, sanity of the mind comes along. And also that requires that we need this grace with us right now, this higher mind. That the sound power of mind comes because there is something. I mean, you can't really even name it, because once you've named it, it doesn't become that. But I feel like grace is the thing that supersedes dogma and hasn't been captured by the powerarchy. It's pure love. And it's the kind of love, it's that mother love that even as you're struggling, even when things are hard, even though we have to face hard things, that grace wraps around us and it makes it just a little bit more gentler, helps our bodies relax. Our bodies take a breath, our shoulders relax. And you work with grace by inviting it in. So presencing both an individual in your life that you would love to invite, share more grace with, because they're going through maybe a harder time than you. Presence then a part of your own life where you would really love to receive more grace. And again, that grace comes in all kinds of ways. It's like people who will be getting unexpected things from all the mankind people, or somebody who maybe really needed a friendship bracelet at a Taylor Swift concert, or me today with you delivering hope biscuits, or somebody I saw the other day out just talking to people, helping them know how to vote, and just like my heart just opened up, like there's humans helping other humans. So where do you need that at right now, my love, in your life? And then lastly, just zone in on a part. Pick one part of the world. There's so much need out there right now. You can't do all the parts. You need to focus on your part, and a part that you really want more love and light and the support of grace to come to. And see that situation that's happening in the world. And I wrote about this in my last wisdom letter. Open up your love and your light. It's a real thing. It's not a woo-woo thing. It's a real thing. Actually, people have studied this, that you can send love and light and see grace, like asking for grace to intercede, asking for grace to support. You don't get to manipulate it and what's going to happen and what it's going to be, but our intentions for grace to happen come into those spaces. Miracles do occur. So see that in your mind's eye, not serving from yourself, but really inviting grace and asking for your own humanness, your own humaneness to feel, not to run it through your body, but to just allow that compassionate heart to touch a person or people in that situation. I've done that before with homeless people. In San Francisco once, I remember stopping and pausing, and there was a person in desperate need, and I paused and I did this exact same thing. And I'm not kidding you. Some woman came from out of the blue, helped this person who didn't have shoes on, and like walked them down the street and clearly knew where to take them. And I was like, oh my God, like this is real. This is real. So I just say a blessing for whoever it is that you presenced, for you, yourself, the part of the world that you zoned in on, and for all of us at this time. Acknowledging the presence of grace is one of my favorite people on the planet, although he's not on the planet anymore in body, John O'Donohue, says when you're going through thresholds, we need more blessings and more support. So there are the blessings, and we go through this time. Just remember, what is the support that you need, the connection that you need that's going to keep you stabilized, sane, centered, calm, radiant, resilient, and rooted. And I invite you to share this podcast with another friend that you want to ask to be part of your lifeline, your wisdom line, your elevation line, your share EOEs, have hope biscuits with me at 3:00. Share this and conversate around it and be able to have honest conversation and dialogue around it. It helps our hearts so much. And I will be back again with you all next time, where we'll dive into the second part, which we'll dive into the power archy and duality reality and whatever kind of comes up from that, and more to come. But most of all, sending you off with much love. So glad to be connected with you this hour, and stay light out there. See you soon. Much love.